August 13th, 2024. Catherine, a guest in our chamber tonight, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, could we get a roll call, please?
Westwood,
Here.
Conley,
Here.
Daniel, Keith, present, Miller, Ronnie,
Yes.
Tupin. Here.
All right, I would like to note and call out that Councilmember Miller is not with us tonight. He is able to join online. We've discussed that he is basically an audience member, so he will not be joining in council discussion or participating in debate or voting, of which we don't have any. But he's welcome. He basically wants to be involved for an awareness, so I commend him on joining us, and thankful he did that. But then we'll take his comments along with general public comments when we get to that point.
Mayor, why would he not be able to participate?
So as a quorum, he cannot be part, so you cannot, so like if you have, I'm basing it off the discussion about if there's like a conflict of interest. It's not just that you're not supposed to vote, you're not supposed to participate in the discussion as a quorum member. And since our charter describes a quorum as physically present, so basically, it's not just that he doesn't vote, he's not a member of the council tonight. But he is a very diligent council member who wants to be caught up and listen to the conversations about the budget and all of that. Did I understand the question properly? Did I answer it to your satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, we've had council members participate in the discussion online, so that's, I understand that they can't vote.
I'm interpolating from other conversations with Dan, and in fairness, that conversation was in the context of conflicts and interests and such. And the guidance has always been if they cannot vote, they should not be participating in the discussion and the persuasion.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Conley and a second by Councilmember Ronnie. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's vote.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel? Yes. Keith? Yes. Tupin? Or Ronnie, sorry.
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
All right, I will entertain a motion on the minutes. It can be for one or both, motioner's preference.
I move to adopt the minutes of July 9th and July 23rd, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ronnie, a second by Councilmember Keys. Any discussion?
I just wanted to point out that the two attachments, I did not put those in the packet, but I do have the attachments. They were comments from the last meeting, and they will be on the, with the final minutes.
On the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Like correspondence?
Well, it was minutes, so when they made a public comment, and then in the minutes I put the attachment,
Oh,
the
gotcha.
attachment, and it'll just be attached to the
Okay.
minutes. So I just realized I didn't include them.
Thank you for catching that. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, let's do a vote.
Conley?
Yep.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Stephen?
Abstain, as I was not here.
Motion has 4, it passes. All right. I will entertain a motion for warrants payable.
I move to approve warrants payable in the amount of $794,910.61.
I will second that.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Ronnie and a second by Councilmember Daniels. Questions or comments regarding the warrants?
$440,000 of that was for the stormwater maintenance project. $144,000 of that was for our insurance, for our property and our liability insurance for the city. So that's really the bulk of, you know, and then there were some other smaller items, we'll call them $20,000 items out there, but.
20 below.
20 below.
Not that small.
I would,
So, yeah.
I will add a comment and a thank you and kind of a vote of confidence in the system working. The two council members that were approving warrants today, thought that there was, one that was in there that did not show up on the report when they were validating things, and it was just a matter of a checkbox when the report was printed, so it was easily corrected. But they caught that, and that was good. There was also a specific payment regarding some shots for the police dog that they caught based on an understanding that that was not going to be coming out of the general fund. And so it turned out it had gone kind of the submitted didn't go through the normal channels, but because they caught it, it was able to be addressed, and it'll be coming out of the, I know it's not the official fund name, the drug forfeiture fund, but that's the stuff that is used for related expenses, and so the dog shot. So that was two examples that I got to observe just by being in the presence today of the system working just exactly how it's supposed to. So I appreciate the attentive eye that you all take when you take that responsibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Cinda, for doing that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely.
You're welcome to do it every week, every week.
You won't be able to when school starts.
Once school starts, I might be able to.
Hopefully that'll slow down for me, I'll have time to do it.
And I think everybody's had a chance to do it. If you have not, I would certainly encourage you to take a chance to do it
I think we all have.
occasionally. All right, I think everybody has too. Any other comments on the warrants? Hearing none, let's do a vote.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Connie?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. We're down to mayor's business. I did not get a chance to print out my report, so what I'm going to do is jump into a couple of sets of notes to refer to. So first off, we did fill our vacant staff position in the front office. Chrissy Halverson started with us on Monday, and so she is in there. They've also, in this change, done a little bit of a shift adjustment. I think what they're going to do is Chrissy and Monica are going to alternate weeks on who's on the 8 to 4 and who's on the 9 to 5. So it's kind of some equal coverage in there. At the same time, gives them a little more flexibility for their personal schedules. I think that's kind of a good idea that they put in. Additionally, we hired a part-time officer, Eric Homeister. This was just a part-time position to backfill a part-time position that helps with detective works and reports and stuff. In this particular case, there's also a possibility that individual may be a candidate for consideration in the school resource officer program, if in fact we move forward with that. Union negotiations, we're still going back and forth on a couple of things, but they are not budget impacting. The budget stuff has all been agreed to and resolved, but it's some definitions about what constitutes a work week and double time and fancy double time and some other things there. We were about done on it last week, and an interruption came in and it didn't get finished, so hopefully we'll get that wrapped up this week, but it's not budget impacting. The other thing I had, and we'll kind of talk about it, is we were able to finalize the resort tax budget, and I'll leave that till we get to the budget discussion and can talk about it in a little more detail, as well as kind of the big projects next year. The mine update, mine is still progressing. We are working on getting that into our stormwater. So far, the Department of Abandoned Mines, part of DEQ, has stepped up and been really absolutely stellar in doing it. I think they realized it was something that very clearly fell in their responsibilities, but I also think they recognized the opportunity to have a good story that shares what that program is. It's basically funded by active mining and puts dollars aside to go in and solve the problems from mines of yesteryear, and so that's going well. and then a note that there was something there that when they deleted it disappeared, and I don't remember, I hope I got it in there. The rest of it is kind of budget related, so I'm gonna wait until we get to the budget discussion, which I anticipate will probably be the bulk of our meeting tonight. But is there any other questions from council?
Anything on fashion?
Oh, so, thank you, the Rocky Fork property. We have put in the request for what they call the front loading. The current, estimations are that we will have that by the end of the month. Having said that, I mean, as it's getting closer and closer, there's hopefully less and less flexibility in those numbers.
Front
But-
loading?
So basically, we don't have the ability to write a $2 million check. And so they give us the money up front, and then we can write a check on it. And all of that's gonna be very time sensitive, because we have X number of days to do it in. So we are working in that. We actually have a couple meetings, set up on that this week, trying to finalize and make sure that everything's there. But it appears that all the pieces have come together, and so we're hoping to have a closing either by the end of this month or the first part of next month at the latest. And then, once that acquisition is done, we'll immediately move into the let's get it cleaned up
I thought you were
category.
talking about like front loader, like.
No, they talk about making sure the check clears.
Okay.
And so we reached out to the auditors to double check, because we've not done this process before and validated, and so we're working with the different agencies on how to do that. One thing that's worth mentioning, even though it's a budgetary impact, so there is a thing called a budget amendment, which we try to do our budget complete and upfront, but there will be things such as the Bastion property, or if there's other projects, what we'll have to do is come to a budget amendment to do that, but you don't know what's happening or how much it's gonna be or what the numbers are involved until it happens. So it's not, it doesn't really play into our annual planning thing, but in keeping all the books straight. So I anticipate that there will be, even though we've got our regular budget, I anticipate within the next couple of months, there will be a budget amendment specifically to address that property, so, and that acquisition. Did I answer all your questions on that?
Yep.
All right.
Will the
The
admin,
go ahead.
will the admin committee handle that amendment, or is that something that will come out of the?
It'll come to the whole council, so the front office will put it together for us, but it'll come through admin. The possibility also exists, and this is a question mark. This is one of those things that may require, basically authorizing the mayor to sign X, Y, or Z. The possibility exists that we may end up doing a special council meeting if we have to, like, because we have like a 3-day turnaround. There's some debate and discussion on what those rules are. Again, something we'll hopefully find out later this week. But with any luck, it'll line up 2 months from now when we're doing or 2 weeks from now when we're doing our meeting. But if it ends up being a little bit outside of that, we may have some more information, but. Thank you for that, because maybe that was the other thing that I forgot.
Maybe.
All right. Hearing none, let's go ahead and go to public comment. So this is the one of 2 opportunities, actually, that the public will have to address the council. Generally, this first public comment is on any action items that are on the menu. Since we don't have action items tonight, it'll just be an open public opportunity to address council prior to us going into the discussions that will be the council portion of this meeting. And so I'll go ahead and I will open the meeting to the public. We will start out with those in the chamber. If you'd like to speak, stand up, state your name, where you reside, and then direct your comments to the chair, and everybody else will eavesdrop and listen in. Hearing no comments in the chamber, we'll go to online. I see a raised hands online. And I want to say that's Angie. I apologize, it's a little bit of an angle.
Yeah, looks like it.
Oh, that's just the cursor on the computer.
Oh, that's, I'm sorry, I didn't look.
We're not
Do you want to go squeeze that out of the way so I don't call on her throughout? If there's anybody online who would like to speak, if you could turn on your camera or alternatively come off mute, then theoretically, Angie, you're off the hook. Going twice, and to make it official 3 times, and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment. All right, we do have, kind of a lot of fun and excitement on here, from the council agenda spots, particularly as we're coming in on, budget in a couple of weeks. So let's start with Public Health and Safety, Committee Chair Conley. Do you want to give us a brief update?
Yep, we discussed recommendations for additional stop signs in the city, due in large part to not having curbs to paint yellow. People park right up to the corner, blocking a clear view of the traffic. Recommending a stop sign at 8th and Word, as well as one at 12th and Hauser. Public Works and the chief will also make a recommendation on 18th and Adams or 18th on Word and Word. So those 2 intersections near the school need to be looked at seriously. The school resource officer, we received a draft of the agreement with the school district and the city to review. So I understand that they may be backing off on the 50% of the SRO's salary, where they had previously agreed to 75%. So we'll just have to see where that goes through future meetings. We discussed banning the use of Jake brakes, particularly on Highway 308 or from 308 to 19th Street. But apparently the state regulations don't allow us to ban them. And our noise ordinance probably won't sufficiently cover that kind of noise. It may not be defensible. So I don't know what we're going to continue to do with that. Sidewalks, repair or non-existent sidewalks on Broadway, especially between 14th and 15th, in front of Roosevelt. You'll see that there's actually big slabs of sidewalk gone. And in front of the mine parking lot that was lost during the flood. So we were informed that sidewalks are the responsibility of the adjacent landowner. And
On Broadway, there's some exceptions to that. There's an MOU in place with the state. If it's more than 6 feet, it's them. But it may take a couple of years to get action. If it's less than 6 feet, then it's the city's responsibility. And we have, through ordinance, shifted that responsibility or designated that, delegated, whatever term you want to use, that responsibility to the adjacent property owners.
Right, so that's ongoing. And the police admin person, I guess Eric Holmeister, we're gonna get him up to speed on grant writing.
Nope, that's actually Chrissy.
Or is that Chrissy?
That's Chrissy.
Okay, Chrissy Halverson. So, our hope is that this new person, who is willing to do this, get them up to speed on grant writing so we can get some grants going. That was public health.
Thank you. The only thing I'd add to that is what I've requested, based on that conversation, there's been input from public community members and from several council members, as far as signs to have, or signs and markings for public safety. What I've asked is, the Public Works Director and the Chief of Police to work together and make a recommendation, to bring to me. I believe there's gonna be a couple of, probably some one-on-one conversations for ideas in a couple of the areas that have been hot spots that have bubbled up and not been resolved in years past, and hopefully we'll get those resolved. But at this point in time, I view that as an administrative thing, and I've asked them to come to a recommendation, and then I'll basically be the fall guy, to say, yes, make a decision and provide them some air cover, in that action. But at the same time, I don't anticipate that's gonna happen in the next 2 weeks, so we'll share that information with council, and if there's any feedback or concerns, the council will certainly have an opportunity to raise those concerns. But as far as next steps, I've asked those two to get together and form a list of their recommendations.
We're also still discussing bump outs on the crosswalks on Broadway as not having a permanent curb, but perhaps, painting a bump out so that a pedestrian would step out 10 feet so you can see around the cars parked there. And we might be able to do that with just paint, but, it bears further investigation
Yeah, they have to sign off on we have to submit a plan and they have to sign off
to
on it.
MDT.
But it basically allows us to increase the safety without introducing additional physical barriers and challenges for clearing of the snow. There was a copy of a school resource officer agreement that the committee was provided. It'll come before the whole council before it's executed. That'll be one of those things that the council authorizes the mayor to enter into, but the committee does have that. And if anybody else has, reach out one-on-one and you can either ask me or anybody on that committee and we can get you that if you're interested in looking at your draft. Any final questions for Public Health and Safety, sorry?
With the Jake brake,
An air compression brake.
I not what is, but with those, are you also looking at Highway 78?
They
Yeah,
would be,
white.
yes. It would be, yes, it'd be, in, what we were asked was to look into, the person who was requesting this thought that they were already illegal in the city limits, and they're not.
Gotcha.
So we were looking, and I told him that, I replied to his email and told him that it is not illegal to have air compression brakes in the city limits, if allowed to use them. We do have our noise ordinance signs, but there's an exception for
Jake brakes.
well, not specifically, but it's mechanical type things. If you have the right muffler on it,
Okay.
the noise ordinance does not apply.
Okay.
And the MDOT in their MCA code actually states in there that you cannot restrict those.
Okay.
As long as they are using the correct muffler for their vehicle.
Okay.
And those are very highly regulated by the Department of Transportation, which likes to go around and pull people over, such as our loader, the city loader the other day. But there were no infractions, so it was good. They were fine.
All right.
Wow.
Any other questions for Public Health and Safety? Thank you. Let's move to Admin and Finance, and just to set the expectation, I imagine this is where the bulk of our discussion will be tonight. So what I'll do is I'll turn this over to Committee Chair Ronning, but at the same time, as we get to the budget stuff, I suspect that a lot of that will come back to me, and they raised some questions on budget, which I've been able to get some answers on.
Okay.
But we welcome questions from everybody as we. So, we did receive, I will offer that we did receive, our final numbers, regarding a mill and all those kind of final calculations, and Lonnie has been exceptionally wonderful throughout this process. Got all of our spreadsheets updated with all of that. By the way, something that she did hand out, is the draft copy of the resolution to approve the budget. So even though that's something that we're doing in 2 weeks with the public hearing, I requested that she have that ready so you guys had a chance to look at that in advance, because we like to do it that way. Councilor Chair, I'll let you kind of lead the discussion, and I'm here on the queue. What about it?
Is it this one? Never mind, there's 50 pages to deal on.
Yeah, the spreadsheet, there's 2 pages to
Okay.
that conversation.
So I believe that everyone has the summary that Lonnie gave us.
That was in the packet.
That was in the packet, with the yellow on that. And just so you're aware, these are a summary of the budget. So,
I'm not sure if everyone's aware, the city gets their funds from several different areas. The general fund is made up of non-levied funds and levied funds, which is are your property taxes, your mills. A mill this year, correct me if I'm wrong, was worth $11,375.16. The city was able to assess 70.85 mills, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And,
Of that 67 went into the general fund.
okay,
It says 85.
Don't look at that.
Don't
Look at this.
Oh, okay.
Look at this page right here.
Okay.
Going back. So if you look there, the cash reserve, which is basically our year-end balance, correct? Of the,
Yeah, technically, so it's,
well, the cash available would be
Cash available.
if that cash available is our year-end. We always try to keep a cash reserve in our general fund. So currently, our cash reserve is $341,000.
May I back up just a
Yeah,
second?
go ahead. Sorry.
Councilmember Conley called out that this resolution calls out 8573. That's not one of the numbers that aligns with the numbers I've written down. Is this an error that we need to
No, it's
correct?
right
or-
here. Right there.
Okay, it's from the
That's
top.
very bottom
Yep.
of,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, because the group health is a separate mill that is assessed over and above the 70.85.
And I was thinking that was the 70.85 versus the 67.
No,
So,
the 67,
thank you.
and then you have your police retirement at 1 mil, and then your insurance, which we just paid, $148,551. So, then that's for your property and your liability insurances. And then, the purpose is,
retirement.
retirement.
The other retirement fund. There's
Right.
two different retirement. We have the police
Right.
and then we have
So-
the regular.
If you take the 67 and you add up those three columns, those three lines, comp insurance, PERS, and police retirement, you get the 70.85. Over and above that, they allow us to assess for the group health insurance of 14.88 mils for 172,294. So our total mills is 85.73. Does that sound right? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, all right.
I'm cut up now.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay, all right. So on the next page, and this is, you know, so, is the list of all the non-levy funds. And these are our fees, our resort tax, disaster emergency services money, drug forfeiture money, building code enforcement fees, business registrations, all of that is our non-levy funds, not
Business registrations are in the general fund,
non-tax. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah. So,
And if I may,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
will kind of
Take
add,
over anytime.
no, I will kind of add to that, that if you look at the resolution, you'll notice that the totals down there are just shy of $25 million, which is a big jump, and it's one of those things that makes you go, what? And that has to do with, either this, because the way the budgets work, your money coming in and your money going out have to equal each other. And so what happens is, a lot of this is our stormwater project, that money has to be accounted for. So if you go down through here, you'll see that specifically comes in. So that number being high is not a
Right.
long-term. I think we have somebody online who may not be mute, just as awareness.
Just Doug.
I was being generic.
Oh, sorry, okay.
No offense, Doug. So the difference, I was gonna say, the difference is 3 million, is that what I'm saying? Or the total requirement's 24,983, and the total resources are 21,926.
So non-tax resources versus total resources versus taxes. So of that 25,975,000 is from property taxes.
Yeah, you have to add your non-tax resources plus your property tax revenue, and it adds up to your total requirement.
You have to read from right to left on this, so pick your favorite language that does that, and then it makes sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts. to
I
the
still
budget.
see that when you add the property tax revenue and the non-levy, non-tax, it adds up to the 24,983.
Correct.
And on this non-levied fund,
Right.
The total resources are 21,926.
right, and then
Plus-
you have to add
Plus
in
the
your
3
general
million.
fund. You have to add the non-levy funds versus your general fund.
You gotta add them all together.
So if we add the 21 and the 3, I
Three.
end up with the 24.
You should. Yep. In a perfect world.
Excel did.
Excel, yeah.
What Excel copy? Okay, that's all,
Yeah.
that's where I was going.
Yes.
I wanted to know where this
Yes.
number came from. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so if on this general fund, you'll see our cash reserve and the total requirement that we have, our cash available, which is our carryover, and the non-tax revenue, which is all of our fees and stuff that go into the general fund, and then the non-tax resources, and then the tax revenue, so our total resources. So the total resources have to equal the total requirement.
It is a little bit off, according to my math. That's like about $1,000.
Looks the same to me. 25, 28,
So, I'm not doing
791.
On the resolution,
Well, if you have the 21,926,101 plus the 3,058,013, you get 24,984,114.
and I'm doing the resolution, and I'm sorry, that's what I was adding.
If I'm looking at the right numbers, which it might not be.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
So next week, when we vote the budget in, what you vote in is this resolution. And so all of these numbers here, we want to match in our budget.
Yeah.
Because
Now, having said that, these two are basically spreadsheet cheat sheets made to make life easier. There's a possibility that human error can have intervened, so if you spot something, please
Right.
feel free to ask and validate.
I can tell you what it's off.
2498. Oh, see, oh, it's off.
So is yours off within the non-levied funds or in the levied?
About $580, so we can look for that, probably find it.
Yeah, I got 580 off, correct?
Is it divisible by 9?
Cheat sheet.
Don't think so.
Well, so just so you guys know that I was rushed on this. So, yeah.
It's okay, we'll figure it out. You have 2 weeks to find it.
I know you're a perfectionist, Lonnie, so that's,
I know.
But this is good, I mean, because you guys need to look at this, and
Yeah.
if there is
Yeah,
errors, we need to have them fixed. And
okay.
so,
So that is, like I say, the summary of all of these sheets. Now, it's really important, and what we did at admin was we went through in the budget, and we looked at the percent that it's up, or that it's the same, or that it's down. Because to me, that was kind of the red flag, if something went up, a line item went up 400%, why did it go up 400%?
May I add
Yeah.
a little? So if you read this column again, okay, so there's 2 different sections within the packet. And by the way, just for the public's knowledge, these are not only included in the council packet, but they're also available online. If you go to the front page and go into news, there's a section on budget. And these worksheets that we're looking at, have been updated with the latest version. There are a couple of changes. The biggest things that, anyway, so they've been updated, and we'll talk about that as we talk about the numbers. But if you look at this chart, if you look at kind of just right of center, it says current budget amount. That is last year's budget. So this is basically a report that's run coming into the budget year. If you look to the left of that, you'll see the actual amount. So that's one of those things to pay attention to, that where it says 23, 24, you'll notice that's under a headline that says actuals. So if you go back to where it says current budget, and then you look at it'll tell you what a percentage-wise from there, but then you've got the preliminary budget, which is what we're working on, and it also gives that with a perception in the far right, a percentage, so it'll tell you how it is. So what she was saying is she's looking at that final, there's a couple of things that you look through and makes you ask questions. One of them is looking at the percentage changed in the old budget. I can give,
And it's good to look at how much of their
Yeah,
budget they spent
and
last year.
then look at the
Yeah.
current budget to the actual. So like an example of something that came up today is if you go to page,
Well, let's look at
Well-
the mayor's right there, the office supplies and materials for executive services. There was a $500 current budget, $94 was spent this year. But he's asking for $2,000. So it's a 400% increase. But there's, page one, under executive services, 410, 200, got it?
Yeah,
But there's a little caveat there that says it includes $1,500 for a new computer. So it explains why it's a 400% increase in that line item.
He's already broken one of his own.
Pardon?
I said you've already broken one computer of your own. You
no, it's recovered, it's there. But I'm also not in a race to spend it. There was another one that I was looking for that was a good example under pool, I want to say it was on page 5 or 6. Well, maybe it's a little bit, library. Maybe it's on the whole separate page.
Page 11?
Page
That's
11?
the one we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so page 11, thank you. So if you go to page 11 of the revenues, there is, one there, other professional services. So last year, there was 400 budgeted, 1,500 spent. This year, it's 10,000 budgeted, which is a pretty hefty 2,500% increase. And so what we did is we were able to go to that department head and say, explain yourself. And basically, so professional services, if we call in a professional plumber or a heating specialist or something from the pool, we may in fact not spend $10,000 on professional services repairing our equipment. But what had happened is in years past, that money wasn't designated for that. It was designated just in other spots within that. So interestingly enough, if you look at the bottom number for the pool, it actually matches it. It went from 15,600 to 152,600 to 152,810. So there's a $210 difference. So it's just a matter of how those are allocated within that. So as you kind of go through and review these, those are some of the fields, and that's for the public as well. As you go through, or if you look or ask questions and you want to understand something, those are a couple of key things that jump out. If there's a percentage in that old budget that's changed, that's kind of a high. Or if you look at what was budgeted versus what was actually spent. So we have to be in budget when it's all said and done.
So for instance, telephone, the budget went up 680%.
Mhm.
You've got to give it, so start with the page number.
Page number
So under
11.
pool still.
11.
Okay, on 11, okay.
So they were over budget by 680%, is that correct? And then this year, their budget is 500% over what they had last year, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The telephone, okay, 400, which one was it? Are you looking at,
345.
345.
345 code telephone, so,
We had budgeted $500 last year, and the phone bill, they had paid $3,398 for the phone. Bonnie, do you?
now,
The internet though?
so,
That was my next
so
question.
I would say, so part of that is that to have the solar panels there, the assumption was is that they had to have, the internet running year round, and it does not.
It does not, right? For the solar, right? Is that why
Yeah,
they need
but
it?
they
Or
still
not?
need it for
For the
internet,
sum-
for the card.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll shut it off when the pool's done.
So
or put it on.
theoretically,
There's telephone and internet.
Mhm.
so that 3398 won't be hitting that because we're not gonna have it on for the majority of the year.
No.
So
No,
we
when
should come
had-
in,
No, when we had them install the solar panels and stuff, they told me that we needed the
Sure.
internet.
that they
all-
required it.
yep, and again, I know that's been debunked,
Yeah.
so.
So going forward, it won't be that 30.
Is it a set monthly fee there for internet and phone?
Like over $200, like $250 or something?
But is it set? That's what I'm
A
wondering.
flat rate, you mean?
Mm-mm. And it's not the same every month, but it's still 200 and some.
And the pool's open 4 months of the year?
Mm-hmm.
So do we,
Three?
do we
It'll-
really need
it'll-
$2,500 for that then?
That was kind of my thought.
If it's gonna be just 4 months? Internet, do we thought the whole budget?
So,
But, so you have to remember though, the pool is weird because it overlaps. So we have this year.
it's
still,
half in this year and
Yeah.
half in next year.
And then part of it in next
So
year and
June.
stuff. So if we open,
So we paid January through June.
so it would be, it could go down, I'm not sure.
So
It's not gonna be $3,300.
So- I will offer, so first off, I would say we welcome any and all questions as you go through here. Both tonight, and over the next 2 weeks as you go through and review these, and things, particularly with kind of those call-outs, things that make you go, my request is that as you write those down, what I would like to be able to do is address these sooner rather than later, so that we don't have Lonnie in a crunch in 2 weeks as we come into that. I'd like to think we have most of this. Now, having said that, I am not micromanaged, budgets, although there are some budget conversations that are happening. So, for instance, under the court, there was 1,000 allocated, 1,300 spent, and it jumps up to 2,000.
What page
Now-
was that?
I'm sorry,
Page one.
see, my bad, page 1, under city municipal court, specifically line 210, which is also office supplies and materials.
Got it.
Mhm.
So one of the things is we've reached out and said, help explain your usage compared to the rest of the office. And also looked at the purchase history of, if that was purchased at the end of the year, and if they run their printed mailings and stuff that they send to everything. So there are things that from a managerial standpoint, we reach out and ask questions, and compare to other departments. We have tried to do that, but I haven't quite got to the point of how come, is 3,000 right for you, or is 2,500? We started out by having department heads go through and build their budgets and define them, and come within the range. Sometimes there's gonna be a little bit of shift, like professional services on the pool has existed in the past, but it was being paid from other line items. As long as their budget is correct, it's there. So, so I don't want to get to the point of micromanaging their budgets. However, it is council's job to approve the budget. So if there's any questions that you have, I certainly want to do the research to address them.
And I don't necessarily want to go through this page by page unless you want to.
No, I was just gonna suggest is if there's a, like maybe we could do a shared Google Doc where we could, so now everybody's asking the same question. You see that it's already, we just put our questions in that.
Honestly,
I would have an issue with that because that sounds like an electronic forum.
Yeah.
And so it would need to be available to the public. But if you go through and ask your questions and say, page 13, line item 510 under, 5103, here's my question. If we could get those all in this week, I know that's a little bit of an ask, but I don't anticipate there's gonna be a lot of additions, but this is what drives our world for a couple of weeks until we get this done.
But I did want to bring up to the non-levied funds, just as a point of clarification, because it came up this morning. The Urban Renewal TIF District, currently, it's collected, $95,484. That's what's in the fund right now. None of that has been spent yet, because apparently we don't have a mechanism in place right now to do that. So we're estimating we'll get another 100,000 in that, so by the end of the year, we're hoping to have 195,000. So, that is that, non-levied funds.
And I'll tweak that to, it's not that we don't have a mechanism, the mechanism is that council approves it, the urban renewal makes a recommendation, and then council approves it, but we don't have the game rules about what they
Yep.
have agreed about what they're gonna spend the money, what the criteria are.
Yeah,
What's the
thank you for
criteria?
clarifying that.
And what kind of buffer they're gonna keep in that fund?
And their discussion right now is that they want to keep a fairly substantial,
It may be a couple of years. yeah.
absent something significant coming up, then it may be 2 or 3 years.
But it's always good to look and see what, like in these non-levied funds, what our cash available is, because that's our beginning balance.
Mhm.
And then, what we estimate that revenue to be. Resort tax, just so everyone knows, Right now, we have $829,000 is our cash available in our resort tax after the end of this last year. We have to budget we have to estimate what we think our revenue is going to be, and we always estimate on the high side, because if we estimate under what we actually bring in, we have to return that money to the taxpayers as property tax relief. So we are estimating $1.97 million this next year. Last year, we did 1.8. You know, just so we have that buffer. And as everyone knows with resort tax, if we don't have it, we don't spend it. We have certain projects, and Chris can chime in on this as well. We went over this in the resort tax committee over and over again. We have certain things that it's already allocated for that has to go to. So those things, you know, come first. And then after that, our projects can come out. If you look in the resort tax budget itself, we had the, I know. Oh,
She's jumping around.
I'm sorry.
No,
I just wanted to get these highlights for you guys.
Yeah, and I wanted to
Page
make a couple call-outs too.
Yeah, so.
Did we get a page number on pool?
9, sorry.
Page 9.
So the first few pages are the general budget, by the way. And then on page 8, which is the tip, just as another kind of follow-up on that, those dollar amounts are estimated. That's a weird one in that we get it several months later. So it's like October-ish when we find out what those amounts are.
Is that this page that we can't read?
If you go, don't go in the packet. If you go online to where he told you to, then you can.
Yeah,
you'll
just
be
the
able to-
online is much easier.
Yeah,
It wasn't all pages, it's just the some.
yeah, I noticed that too.
Resort tax is on page 12.
Yeah,
It starts on page 9
Oh, gotcha.
for all this stuff.
so we did, in our resort tax committee, and I should have printed these off for everyone, because it makes it a lot easier to read. It's a summary of the resort tax. It's not 100% correct, because
We tweaked it.
we tweaked it after this. But we had some big capital projects in there, that we will hopefully get enough resort tax money to be able to purchase. It includes a road grader, a used road grader for Public Works of $50,000. The Main Street sidewalk repair, we have budgeted $80,000. Public Works needs a new vac truck. That's the big purchase for the year of $530,000.
And there was
But
a
it's used
conversation.
every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, pretty much, yeah, more days than not in a week. It's not 24/7, but it gets used pretty close to daily.
Could that be covered through a grant?
The other thing is that we had looked at, if you go back to that balance where we're starting out with $830,000 in resort tax, that seemed a little bit excessive, particularly, you know, that's money that's coming in, and so we had looked at, you know, once we have enough to make sure that we're able to meet our core payments that are obligated, which is less than half of what that resort tax budget is.
Mhm.
The good news is, if we kind of look at what we already know about by the time we get to our budget, we already have our Q1 numbers coming in, so we kind of already know what kind of year it's going to be and if we're going to be able to meet that. So we keep enough cash to make sure that that plus what we've collected so far already is enough to make, if the world dried up and stopped tomorrow, we could still meet those payments, even though that's not anticipated. But we had looked at whether to use that excess cash to pay down the pool. And the short conversation is, the pool has a pretty good interest rate based on when it came into existence and the type of loan that it is. If we looked at buying the back truck on a purchase or a finance thing, it added $100,000 to the cost of the vehicle to do it through the lease and buy down. And so financially, it made more sense and prudent to pay cash for it once we know we have the cash to do that.
And just so you know, we have, there's certain things that we absolutely have to pay. We transfer $100,000 into water, $150,000 into sewer, and that is to help with our, bondability in those two departments, and it also helps keep our water and sewer rates from having to go up to pay for additional bonds there. Pool principal and interest is $98,700 a year. That comes directly out of resort tax. And then maintenance, O&M on pool is $152,000 to run the pool. That directly comes out of resort tax. Parks, O&M.
And you'll see all that referenced in this budget as well.
Yeah, and Parks O&M, which is our Parks employee, is $107,161. And we also have Streets O&M of $228,000, which is also, he does both. And I think there's other things in the streets that come out of there, or asphalt, or, you know, things like that, repairs. And then we have, what used to be the Parks Board budget is now called Parks Projects, because you know how that has changed. And that's $85,000. And so,
And we did add an additional, I want to say $9,000, for some specific projects that were tied to sustainability, the
Yeah, we
e-charging
did.
stations.
perfect.
There was a little bit of,
Which line item is that?
that's what I'm looking for, because one of the things, I think
Happy to see that in there.
it's under
Yeah.
roads. But one of the issues we had is there isn't a, we've looked at creating a new line item, because do you call it a park, do you call it a street, do you call
Yeah.
it a, and my recollection is we decided that was roads. And so I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look down through, Lonnie, am I correct in my recollection?
I don't remember where we put it.
Roads and streets, no?
I'm gonna say roads and streets,
Road and street, gas.
I see equipment repair, but that's not it.
Solar grant match, $399 other contracted services. No,
No,
that's for the shop.
That's the solar grant match. Wayfinding we left in there because we weren't sure on that one. We had the sidewalk project in there, street sign.
Could it be improvements other than?
Well, we were basically doing it as like a grant match.
How much was it?
Yeah, what was the amount? 9,000 total, but it was 3 separate things, so it might be in different categories maybe? Was it equipment repair?
No.
No, it was.
Lonnie, on page 10, under asphalt, I'm seeing the capital outlay of 400,000. Is that the 400 we took out of?
Yeah, that's not budgeted no more.
Okay, so, but it is,
That was in the current budget.
oh, that was in the current budget, not the current, okay, yeah, so we did take it out of there. That's
Right.
all right, sorry, I was looking at the wrong column.
And
No.
I'm not quite sure if it got, that was one of those last items that got thrown at me, and I'm not sure if I included it in there. So if we
Okay.
need to,
Let's put a question mark on there.
I did have a question on page 10. Grounds maintenance, line 365, it went up 405%.
So what happened was, so when you see that 405, so we had budgeted 1,000 in the previous, and then we spent over 4,000. So that's why it says 405%. So that's why we budgeted 4,000 this year, because of the maintenance in the parks is actually getting done and stuff, so it cost.
So it hadn't been getting done
Correct,
before.
not really, no.
Okay,
So it's just getting
caught up.
caught up.
Yeah, so I guess if we could make sure that that's wherever it needs to be, that $9,000.
Yeah.
For,
Even just
and
welcome
we had-
himself that. Doesn't hurt that one has a cookie, no.
Can we mute him from there?
there we go. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had basically, part of that was to, paint on the concrete, EV parking only by the EV parking stations. And then grant matches for the rest of it.
But what, Grant?
I'm actually pretty confident
only
it's there
thing
because
I
we
put
talked
in
about
there
it. Just need to
was
find it.
the solar panel grant match. We put, those are in there.
Yeah, but this is a different grant, if they put solar panels up at the EV chargers so that the city's not paying the electricity for the EV chargers.
Yeah, potentially on the bathroom.
Go.
3,000 for the replacing the old EV chargers, 1,000 for stencil painting, and then a grant match of 5,000. So maybe
Where'd you
there's,
find that?
that's in the presentation from Alan Best.
Oh,
So I'll just put 9,000 and figure out
Okay.
where to put it in the budget, but I think that was one of the last things that,
It was,
Yeah.
literally, yeah.
It was probably
And
the
that's-
last thing.
I know, yeah. So we do just want to make sure that we have that. And we had originally talked about,
But that was at the same time we took the 400,000 out
Right.
too, so those two things happened at the same time, so.
and people will be happy to know that one of the capital projects is to get electronic speed sign trailers to go at the entrances of our,
calculator.
Vehicle
Yes,
feedback signs,
yes.
Vehicle feedback sign.
that's what the technical called.
Instant feedback.
Speed sign trailers, remember we
Oh,
talked about
right,
it today.
okay.
Those are budgeted, right?
Yeah.
They are budgeted.
$30,000, yes, out of resort tax, yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, so, you know, these are all things that,
Jody, is there a way that you could send us that breakdown? It'd be really nice to.
That is a really nice breakdown, where's that?
Yeah, we can update that, because
yeah, we need to
that's,
update it because on here also is an EDA grant for street improvements, a match of 400,000. And that's not having to come out of resort tax, and
and
if you
it,
wanna.
and it is taken out of here, so it's basically
Okay.
getting paid for out of the
Stormwater and gas tax.
stormwater and gas tax.
So our
it's
1%
related.
stormwater is actually going to help pave the streets behind the stormwater project.
We're gonna
Yeah.
turn 400,000
If
into
we get it,
2 commas.
we have to get the EDA grant, and the
Well,
other, the other 550-some thousand would come out of the gas tax that we're getting.
Jody, I've got this up if you want me to forward it to everybody.
Yeah,
Does it have
the-
the correct, does it have the
doesn't have-
corrections, or?
It doesn't have the $400,000 correction, so you would just have to
Well,
realize
we can just
that-
wait till we get the new
Yeah,
correction.
Right.
I don't,
That'll
well,
just be-
Tom put that together, so I don't know if you.
It's on the Google Drive.
It's online,
It is
it's Google
on-
Drive, yeah.
So, Chris, did you want to add any more on the resort tax?
No, you covered it, okay, thank you.
And so what I'm gonna do is we're gonna update that, and we'll hand that out at the next meeting
And
as
we,
part of the packet.
and we brought all of, I mean, Resort Tax Board was on board with this. If we were going to have to choose between the 400,000 for the streets versus the vac truck, the streets probably would have happened this year and the vac truck next year, because we only have so much money we can spend every year. But we lucked out, so.
The other thing that I kind of wanted to call out while we're talking big ticket items, so next week, and part of this fits into that 25, and you'll see it as you go into the enterprise funds. Specifically, we have, a couple of water projects, that basically what we're looking at, and it's 1 or 2, and the reason that's 1 or 2 is because if we combine them and it's bigger, we get a 75% forgiveness on it. So we'll know that before we go in, so that's gonna be, the water bypass for the bench, which solves the water pressure, which has been up there for decades. Only one house is allowed to catch fire at a time currently. If there's 2 houses at different spots, we don't have enough water volume to address that. Not so much a pressure, it's a volume thing. And then, we have the street project, which is gas tax and stormwater that was just mentioned. That's the EDA grant. We have not received official word, but the magic 8 ball, when we shake it, says all signs point to go, so.
That's the one that they've contacted us and asked a lot of questions and confirmed, right?
All signs look good. We're not making any formal agreements until we have an offer, a letter to sign in our inbox. As of yet, we haven't seen that. There's also a creek project, which is riprap, that FEMA's doing that requires a 25% match. But we're looking to have half of that covered by the state. So we still have some of that we need to cover that you see in there.
Where would
And
that
that's gonna be water and sewer reserves, because it's down along where the bank took out our water lines and sewer lines, and so it actually safely comes out of those funds.
Okay.
So it's out of enterprise funds. I do have a question, just, and I apologize, it's out of order, but just so I don't forget it. Did we officially publish our hearing yet, and did we say it's gonna be at the senior center?
Oh,
What,
The
budget?
the budget hearing,
oh, no, the budget hearing is here. I was
Yeah.
not told it was gonna be at the
there's,
senior center.
there's,
You're thinking of the one for the
what
Yes,
Freight
I'm
West-
thinking, it's my note next to riprap, so there's gonna be a public hearing, for the creek restoration. Sorry, and that one is gonna be at the senior center.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, the public hearing for this was in the paper.
It was,
Yes.
it was
It-
in this week's, and it'll be in next week.
And it's also online, so we're doing everything we can to let the
Right.
public know that it's there. And again, like I said, if there's any questions that come up, we're happy to address those as well.
I do have a weird question on page, and this is the revenue.
Page of revenues,
Yeah, page 1. Street closure payment, does that mean that we're getting more money for street closures? 181%?
Yeah.
So more people are closing streets.
So it's
For
the,
example.
it's kind of, it's, for the use of city-owned land. That's where it
It's
goes.
a general, okay.
It's what, the fees we bring in from those land applications. So technically, it's not always closing the street, but it's using city
City-owned
property.
land.
Yeah.
she's
The
on the
revenue.
revenue side.
And weed control charges on page 2, the top. Weed control charges, 243%.
Yeah, so that's if we have to go,
And spray for weeds because.
no, not spray.
Tall grasses.
Tall grasses. It's the tall grass one.
And
So-
If there'll be there should be a matching expenditure for that, because we don't make money off of that. We charge them what it costs us to,
And it,
To
just
mow
because it shows that, it just means that I didn't anticipate that much revenue, that many things being, but it's a wash. It pays out, yeah, because we pay somebody
Pay
to
for
mow it.
itself.
right, we don't make money off of it.
We
Yeah.
just collect it later on taxes.
We're not in the property
Yeah,
maintenance.
because somebody told me that they did receive a letter from the city up on the golf course that the grasses were high, and if they didn't knock it down, the city wouldn't charge them.
Yeah, that's,
And that's what
and
we're
it'll be
talking
put
about.
on their taxes. And
Yeah.
so that's the incoming side of that.
And that goes on their taxes?
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
And that's because of an ordinance that allows that to happen. So basically, the city sends out a nice letter that says, if you can get to this before we do, then it'll cost you less money, because it won't have overhead and administration built into it.
Okay.
Question? Who should we direct our questions to? Would that be you, Lonnie, and, or?
I would
Where?
say Lonnie and me, both.
Yeah,
So if you get 6 emails, that would be nice
That's okay,
in the
yeah,
next week.
before the end of the week.
Okay.
That would be wonderful and fantastic.
Yeah, because there's like, I'm gonna have a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but I think.
Yeah.
And can we BCC everybody else on that?
Yeah.
So they know which questions we are asking?
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah,
as long
you
as
can
it's
blind copy.
BCC,
Yeah,
so
you can
that,
blind copy
if
if you
it's,
want.
if it's sharing information, but the second you respond or reply, you're creating electronic quorum, so be careful of that.
Don't respond.
You know,
Well,
yeah,
if you reply,
Don't respond to
if
all.
you're not, well, you can reply all, because it's not gonna go to everybody. When
Right,
it's
sure,
blind
it's
copy,
blind.
it's,
Yeah.
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 It's only gonna go to Dave, Lonnie, and-
my guidance would be, you know the spirit of it,
Yeah.
don't create an electronic quorum. And the short version is we can, if particularly if it is 6 letters, and here's my 23 questions or
Yeah.
my 4 questions,
I wanna make it manageable for you
That-
guys.
that-
so that's
well,
what we do.
then that's not hard to print those and make them available either, so.
Okay. I would like to spend some time, like, just diving into this, and I
Yeah,
have
line
time
item
this weekend to
thing.
look at it.
Yeah, there's not significant changes from what you've had from a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
other than it's worth spending the effort now, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
as we
well, I didn't
move
wanna do
in.
it before.
I didn't want,
Change,
when
so,
it's subject to change. The things that I will call out that have changed significantly, because we have the real mill value, and I'll speak a little bit to page 5 of the expenses. So this is fire protection and control. This number is still subject to change. This is quote-unquote worst-case scenario. So if you look at how that's gone up, what happens is we have a current agreement in place with, so what we've written is what we're contractually both obligated to. So anything that comes down from this is basically, because we've, talked with the fire department, and they have agreed to accept less. And the logic behind that conversation, first off, a couple of things. We pursued the objective or the possibility of paying part of that obligation from the resort tax on, for instance, buying a fire truck, to use part of that. The problem with doing that is, as we reached out to the auditors and we revisited that, basically it was the city buying a fire truck, gaining another loan, gaining another obligation, and then what happens if this gets revisited and the city annexes into the fire district in the future? So that was part one, and it opened up too many uncomfortable, let's not go there. It just didn't feel right. So we dropped that element of meeting part of that obligation with resort taxes. I think there is a conversation to be had in the future that basically, particularly if you look at how that goes, it's an increasingly larger percentage of our budget. And so I do think, and this is the presentation that I hope to build, and even if we don't have it completed by, I don't want to give myself that out, there is a presentation that needs to be had with the public so that they understand our budget. Basically, our tax revenues, which you see how little of that is, our property tax revenues, 900 and, I don't have it right on top here, 900 and something thousand. That goes up a maximum, it goes up basically 1/2 the average rate of inflation over the last 3 years. Now, contrast that with our employee salaries that go up at 4% if inflation is 4% or higher, and you can see that automatically we have two lines that are creating a problem from a budget standpoint. So there's a couple of different options. One, we raise property taxes, which, by the way, council does not have the ability to do. That's something that goes to the public to raise taxes. Two, there's an annexation of the fire department, which is a de facto property tax raise, meaning what the residents pay will go up, not because they're paying more to the city, but because they pay a separate amount to the fire district. That's the equivalent of 28 mills. Now, where that gets tricky is a mill is not a mill is not a mill. So there's what's called a floating mill, which is what we have as a city, which is bound by that 1/2 of the rate of inflation over the last 3 years. And then there is a mill is a mill. It turns out that the fire district is made up of both of those. So in reality, if we were paying, and this is where that room for negotiation comes up with, and it's still a conversation that could wrap up and we could see something this year, what we would actually pay is the equivalent of 21% of our mills. And I haven't talked to Tom since the numbers came out, but we anticipated it's in between 21 and 22% of the mills if it was actually being collected directly by the fire department. So then the question is, why isn't that what we're paying? And so that's where that negotiation comes into place. Whether we do that now or whether we do it in 2 years when that contract naturally expires is a different conversation. There's a couple of different mechanisms that comes into play. The third option, which again goes to the voters, is to say, rather than raising your taxes, let's re-put the resort tax out there, because our resort tax is increasing and exceeds our property tax. And that is, can we use the resort tax to pay some of the public safety costs of running our city, some of which are directly impacted by tourism? And so the voters can say, rather than raising our taxes, you have our blessing to use resort tax to help pay fire, emergency services, and police.
Right now, 41% of our general fund goes to fire, right?
Yep, and that is, if you look at that curve as a percentage, it has gone up over the last several years.
Right now, our general fund, our admin is basically, all of our property taxes are basically going to pay fire, or public safety,
Our fire and police.
all of it. All the property taxes right now are. the admin department and everything that goes on there is being completely funded by non-tax revenue.
By
Non-levy.
non-resort tax.
No,
Just
no,
not levy funds.
non-levy funds.
Oh, wait,
Not property-
maybe I'm going to miss what you said right before that.
Right, property taxes are completely, all of our property taxes are being eaten up right now by
Police and fire.
police and fire.
Yep.
So our admin department is completely being funded by non-tax revenue,
Oh,
is what
gotcha.
I was saying.
Our
Does
front
that make
office.
sense? Yes. But they do a lot. I mean, it's anything, it's a,
Thank you.
Another thing to note too.
Loud?
Well, sorry. Another thing to note, so the 70.85 total mills that we levy is actually decreased by our transfer of resort tax into the general fund. So what is allowable is more than what we think we actually levy because of the property tax relief. So that's how the citizens get their property tax relief.
we transfer 5% of our resort tax collected at the end of the fiscal year into our general fund,
Yeah.
and it directly lowers what we
Can
assess,
levy.
what we levy
Yeah.
that year.
So we actually, so it was like what we could, the total we could do was
That's our
like
difference between 70 and
75.
85.
Right.
So,
And some cities, so West Yellowstone, for instance, when they originally passed theirs, rather than doing a 5% back, it just goes directly into their general fund, and their argument, which has been tested and proven in court, is yes, property owners are saving taxes because you didn't have to raise your taxes because you have resort tax. But that is a decision to be made by the voters. Can you please mute our audience, and then when we get to public comment, we'll go ahead and take comments there.
So,
Doug,
You might wanna just
can
tell
you
them.
please unmute yourself,
Or-
keep yourself muted?
Until we get to public comment, sir. Thank you.
um,
We love you.
I know, poor guys. It's so frustrating. This is the one meeting he really wanted to be at.
Well, and the good
So-
news is we'll have this again in 2 weeks, and I do anticipate that he'll be back by then.
So,
I do have a question on what the presentation is gonna look like. Are we gonna be doing something similar to what has been done in the past with slideshows, pie charts, et cetera?
I would like to, because I want to be able to explain.
Full visual.
So there's two parts of this project. One is getting the budget done,
Mhm.
which I feel pretty comfortable that we're there with the exception of some tweaks and what other questions come up. The second is being able to present that to the community. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm really looking forward to next year's, because we'll be recycling the slide, it'll be updating some figures in the slideshow. I'd like, and I hope and intend to have a story that is available to our public. It's basically slideshows for the conversation we've just had.
Okay, great.
And I think Jen Battles has her presentation from
Yeah,
last year.
I have a copy of that as well, so.
Get to take pieces you like.
We've had different variations in presentations over, and I think it's one of the spots where the administration has an opportunity to put their spin on things. If I can just keep the world from blowing up between now and then, it'll be delightful.
Mm-hmm.
and if you have any questions, if I can help in any way, let me know too, or any of us here on admin, we can.
Ask me and I'll tell you to go to Jody.
Or Lonnie.
Well, but my first year on council was in the middle of the end of July, because I took over Glory's term. And, I sat down, Dave and Lonnie, everything about the budget, because it was right in the middle of budget season, and I had no idea, because it was so different than any other, I was a business finance major, and.
And government finance is different.
Yeah, it was not, so I really, it helped a lot to just, if you need someone to sit down one-on-one, and, I can try to explain it, or Dave can, or Lonnie can too, as she's not always available, but we try to not take up too much of her time. but
Yeah.
I know she's been great also, so.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie.
Is there any other questions from the table? If not, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the public and see if they have any questions or they'd like to ask on this particular item.
I just have one more thing.
Okay?
I know a while back in admin and finance, we had discussed about getting line items for employee salaries, not with names, but positions. Is that still something that we can have access to?
All right. At this time, I'd like to, open it up for public comment. If you'd like to come off mute, and ask questions or offer input, you're certainly welcome to do so at this time. Mr. Miller, I see that your phone, yours is unmuted. Do you have questions or comments?
My turn.
Doug?
You get a beer.
Yes.
All right, here, are you there, Doug? Doug's family is Doug Haney. Going once. Anyone else in the public?
It's okay.
Going twice for anybody with questions or input on the budget from the public?
That's okay, it's okay.
And we lost him. Going 3 times, and we'll go ahead and close the public questions or comments on a budget. Again, welcome any input and from any council members.
We definitely want people to understand what they're voting for, so.
Yeah, the goal is that you understand it, and if you haven't understand it, please let us know how to help make it see. Your writing is pretty.
I think we can.
I can read your writing. I think I already covered the large projects and we covered the resort tax. That encompasses all of the things that have changed. Like the most significant one that changed is fire went up a little bit because we got our real mill numbers in. But you can see as a percentage of how that has increased over the years. And that's part of the conversations we've had with them. There's a possibility that may improve in the city's favor. It will not get worsened. It will not get worse because where we're at is contractual. But I think part of going back to that slideshow that you asked about, Councilmember Keys, I think part of that is being able to communicate to the public. How is it you want to address this future problem? Are we going to raise taxes? Are we going to annex into the fire department? Or are we going to, that's the fourth option, right, is cut services, or alternatively, are we gonna use the resort tax, to help address it? Now, the only downside to that, and it's not a downside, because it's all about, you have X amount of money and each dollar can only be spent once. So, for instance, if we're using that to pay fire and then we look at a new back truck, how do we do that? You know, can we afford a back truck this year? Can we not afford a back truck this year?
My only comment on that is if you look at the revenue for the resort tax, it shows, how it's increased every year. In 2021, granted that was a COVID year, we were at 932,000 of collected resort tax. Last year we were at almost 1.4 million. So
50%.
yeah, and it has been going up every single year. And so hopefully that trend will continue. And so as that pie of money gets bigger, there may be some opportunity then to actually use some of that money for public safety, without cutting other things.
And again, ultimately, that's the public's decision, but I think it's
absolutely.
incumbent upon us to be able to communicate that so that the public can make an informed decision on that.
Well, we would still have our parks, you know, we would still have, we have our obligations.
The commitment.
The commitments, it's just, we might not be able to, as to Dave's point, go out and buy a $500,000 piece of equipment. So.
Mr. Miller, you're back with us. Can you hear us all right? And come off mute if you'd like to make a public comment regarding the budget.
I can hear you fine. I'm in agreement so far. I have nothing, I've not heard anything that upsets me. Everything's good.
All right, we'll have you go back on mute then, so you can multitask and enjoy us and your company both.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, let me go back to the land, I'm sorry, administrative,
So,
so, yeah.
I would actually, for resolution number 3622,
yeah.
is that for discussion tonight? Are we done with the budget?
Yeah, are we done with the budget? Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, and again, please get your input in prior to the end of the week. Sooner is gooder.
Prior to the end of the week, as in Sunday or Friday?
Well, if it comes in after Friday, it won't get looked at until Monday. If it comes in Friday after 3. Having said that, if that's your opportunity to work on it, we will welcome your input on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be Friday.
Does that answer your
It does.
your question?
Yes, it makes me wonder if I
Your,
would
your,
clean it
your,
late or
your
waking up
input
late.
is important. We will take it however we can get it.
Are we ready?
Okay.
I'm just looking for the rest of my stack where it picks up with resolution, the business registration fee.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and speak to that while I look through
Okay.
my file?
Well, after we discussed this at admin, let me start over. Danae and I sat down and we tried to make some changes to this so that, nonprofits that sell prepared food on site or prepared food would not be in the $250 category. So our solution that we wanted to present, we did it first at admin and now to council, was to just make all nonprofits, regardless of what they sell, as being in the category 1, the $100. So that's the main change. But in doing that, we changed the wording at the same time because it was prepared food, which we thought fixed the problem that we had. It made it so that restaurants, gas stations, grocery stores, convenience stores, taverns, liquor stores, marijuana dispensaries, smoke shops, and any temporary vendor that sells food or drinks prepared on site would be in category 3, as well as all the lodging. But the way we just wrote this, it makes it so that those,
Gotcha, I see it.
do you see what I'm saying?
Yep, I see what
They
you mean.
have to be prepared food on site, or they're not gonna be in there. So we didn't fix it, we just, and so I'd like some, if anybody has an idea how to make this, because all of those categories need to be in tier 3, regardless if they prepare food on site or not.
So, you want to keep them in the tier 1 category, correct?
The tier 3, the lodging, so,
No, wait,
When we were
hold on.
talking about
But
nonprofits.
you wanna essentially charge nonprofits $100.
right, correct.
So,
And we have them home business, and all nonprofits regardless of item sold, so that's fine, that part's okay. Okay, so the only one that's going to change is,
I think
Yeah,
that's all you need is that, correct?
What's wrong with lodging and prepared consumables?
well, we're basically, if you sell a candy bar in your store right now, or
It's not prepared on site?
that's not prepared on site, you're gonna be in the $250 place. So, like, the Antique Mall sells ice cream sandwiches, so they went from 100 to 250, because they sell ice cream sandwiches outside.
Sylvan Peak.
Sylvan Peak sells trail mix bars inside. So they went from 100 to 250. They're not a convenience store, they're not a restaurant, they're not a,
So,
But it's only.
Okay, so I just wanna
what
clarify.
is the problem in tier 3? I apologize, I'm
okay,
missing it.
so the way that we changed this wording,
Okay.
if you look at it the way the semicolon is, it says businesses that sell foods and or drinks prepared on site and smoke products, including but not limited to. So what's making it in tier 3 is that it has to be food prepared on site. And we want restaurants, gas stations, grocery
But
stores,
it also
convenience
says
stores, taverns.
lodging
liquor-
and accommodations including but not limited to hotels, motels, bed and breakfast,
Right,
and short-term rentals, period. So all of that stuff is included
Right.
automatically.
absolutely, yeah, no, that's not the
So
problem.
do we need to say, in addition, businesses that sell food or drinks prepared on site?
Okay, I'm trying to figure out, are we just trying to figure out the nonprofit issue, or are we
No,
trying
no,
to figure out
there's two different
parts, okay.
issues here.
Gotcha.
The
All right.
nonprofit is fixed.
The retail business, that would be retail, wouldn't it, be selling, bars for the hikers?
It is, but we had it just as prepared food.
But it's not prepared by them. They buy it prepared.
No, that's why it says prepared on site.
That's why that's what we're trying to fix.
So you've got prepared on site, which solves that problem.
Right, but the way that it's currently written, it makes it so that gas stations and convenience stores and liquor stores are no longer, and marijuana
Right, 'cause you're not
dispensaries,
preparing the
they're
beer.
not preparing the food on
On
site.
Gotcha.
On
Can
site.
you just add a comma after smoke shops? Can you say businesses that sell prepared foods and or drinks prepared on site?
No.
Wait, you've got businesses that sell food or drinks prepared on site, comma, smoke products, including but not limited to restaurants, gas stations, blah, blah. So,
We need to put at the top here, like how we have lodging, and then we could say businesses including restaurants, gas stations, grocery stores, convenience stores, taverns, liquor stores, marijuana dispensaries, smoke shops, and period. And any business
and temporary
including
vendors.
including temporary vendors that sell food or drinks prepared on site. Does that make sense?
You're saying the Oxford comma is killing us here, is what you're
It
saying?
is.
Or would the Oxford comma would save us?
Oxford
Yeah,
comma's
that's what I said,
important.
just put a
I know,
comma
I'm a
after
big
smoke
fan.
shop.
I am too.
Or just do a bullet list.
I think that you have to just put,
you-
move the businesses that sell prepared food drinks on site and down to the bottom.
If I may, I believe, is council all in agreement on the concept and the intent here?
And then I'll,
Yes.
So
Well-
go fix it so that you're happy.
Okay.
okay, so if you guys are okay with the concept,
If we're good with the
If you want me
intent,
to
go
take a
fix
stab,
it.
I can try.
because I know, I think I know how to fix it,
Okay.
but when I read it today, I was like, oh, that's not what we meant.
Yeah.
Can you just do bullet points?
Let's eat, Grandma.
Okay,
When we're working
Okay,
on the
so-
definition,
yeah.
that's where it gets resolved, not here.
Okay, so if you guys are okay with making all nonprofits tier one, the only one that was already been charged that would get a refund will be the Elks.
I'm gonna say the Elks are the.
Because
No,
that will
so-
change them.
Sylvan Peak.
No,
nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
as a business owner, yes, I'm probably a nonprofit in town.
So let me rephrase what I'm hearing Councilmember, Ronning saying. These rates still become effective on July 1st, which means anybody that we've overcharged will get a refund.
Okay.
And I would also put 501c3 on there, not just,
This nonprofit, okay,
yeah, because
perfect.
otherwise people will make that exact same claim.
Okay, okay, and we also, or C6.
Or C6, yeah.
Because the chamber, yeah, a designated,
Designated
Is
nonprofit.
the church a 501c3?
I think it's a 501c or a C6.
the chamber's a C6,
What's a church?
Could you do a federally registered
nonprofit. Let's do that,
Then you don't have to
Yeah.
put all the numbers.
yeah. And then,
Federally recognized, I think
Yeah.
somebody said.
Recognized.
Designated,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay. Nonprofit. Okay, and another thing that we did change is we changed, bar to tavern, because I don't think they like to be called bars necessarily.
It is the Tavern Society.
I am no tavern.
Okay, so if you're okay with that.
We're okay with intent, go clean it up and bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, we don't have to wordsmith
Okay,
here.
we won't have to go through it. All right, perfect. That's all from admin and finance, that's all we talked about today, there.
That's all?
Really, that's all?
That's all?
That's it.
Okay.
So-
All right. Public Works, Council Chair, Committee Chair Keys.
You land use and planning.
Oh, did I skip land use and planning? I'm sorry.
We'll go first.
I mean, I'm gonna do both of them, so
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, are we doing land use and planning?
Why, yes, I believe we are, thank
Okay.
you.
Great. So with land use and planning, we did review large events and small events applications that were drafted up by Brian Hanna in a new fee schedule. There's a couple of projects that come out of that. One, we need to update our ordinance 960 and amend that for the application, because there's a lot of bullet points of items that are needed that are for the big events, but not necessarily for small events. So we're gonna make an amendment for that. We'll probably have that here and available for discussion at the next council meeting.
Because it's like two,
It's like a sentence.
two-word adjustments.
Yeah.
It'll be real easy.
Forward.
It'll be easy, so, and then we also will be putting together two resolutions one will be a change to one resolution. One, we're gonna do a resolution to adopt those applications as actual city documents. And then two will be a resolution to change the fees, of those event applications. Yep.
And basically, that was to basically clarify that it's, part of it is non-refundable.
Yep, exactly. And I think there was actually a change of the actual fee structure too, but we'll have that ready.
960 original.
Another piece that we worked on was temporary use permit fees. So, I have this actually pulled out. So he wanted to bring those fees down just because specifically they were very expensive for being here for a week. And essentially pushing people out the door. So he wanted to bring it down to $25 for an application and a $25 site review. This would eliminate the $150 8 stay to 3 months and the $400 6 months. So essentially, he's like, I'm doing the same amount of work. We don't need to be charging him an arm and a leg. So kudos to Eric for recognizing that.
For Brian.
Brian, thank you.
Eric.
Sorry, I had Eric written down. That's interesting. Sorry, Brian, if you're listening.
They're
Okay.
still required with the fee for the business license.
Yes, they still have to do the business
And then this
license.
is just,
Yep.
or the business registration.
Yep, they're
So
still
this
gonna
is
have to
still-
do that. This is just for the use of private land.
Yeah.
And like, they have to do all the paperwork, the site plans, we're kind of looking through that, but specifically, just, we would be making a resolution to change, one, I think we'd be taking it out of, no, this, sorry, I'm jumping into Public Works next.
Wait, hold on.
It's
But,
out zoning.
There-
yep, so we do need to make an edit into zoning, just because it is a little contradictory. Again, we'll have that ready for review and discussion at the next meeting, unless we have too much budget and stuff, we wanna push it.
You should be all right.
And then it'll be up for action the following meeting. That is what we worked on in land use and planning. We do have some other topic areas that we did not have time to get to.
Yeah, I just want to add my 2 cents. I thought both of those meetings, by diving in and focusing on the specific section in code, it really helped drive the focus into what the problems were and what the changes were. I hope this is an ordinance amendment, oh, this is a resolution, this is a resolution.
So
So
it gave
that
us,
was-
Simplified it.
and just so we have it out there, one of the things, a couple of the items that we wanted to talk about, but ran out of time because we did get into this pretty deep, is we wanted to finish up some of our conversations on the camping ordinance. And then also reviewing the, some changes to vendor use of parks during events. So it does kind of tie into 960, but again, we got pretty deep into actually changing the things that we had from Brian while he was there. We didn't want to waste his time, so.
I'll add just a little bit of additional, color to one of those. One of the questions that I think council needs to take up and consider is that we have had, people, we've seen a huge increase with the small event. We've seen a huge increase in the use of that. And one of the questions is Pride Park is one of the,
Only green.
as the only green space that's downtown. Does council wish to put in a restriction on that or regulate that a little bit differently? And it's certainly within council's purview to do. But until such time as council says otherwise, we're kind of bound from a staff position.
So we do have that included in that conversation. I would love any feedback, obviously, that'd be great.
I would love to also get, the garden party's feedback,
Yeah.
Parks Board, RLBA,
Yep,
because it is a respite area for people who are shopping downtown and who are, they sit there in the shade and.
Yep.
And it is potentially a spot where we may be putting some porta potties or some, permanent porta potties to make it completely a rest area type
Is the
of thing.
Is the garden club the only one that has a current MOU on that location?
Yeah.
Yes.
It may get to the point where we don't ever allow any, use of that at all.
That's what I'm saying, that's part of the
Yeah,
discussion
that's
that you
all.
guys should have, make it non-reservable.
Or certain times of year.
yeah.
I mean,
Or-
if it's Saturday in July,
Again, like we have folks that come in and they use it for, you know, picketing, we have people that use it for music, and like, there's all sorts of uses for it in that public space. It's more so blocking that and making it unavailable, because I mean,
For the whole day.
yeah,
Where,
The exclusive use of it is,
exactly.
yeah,
The exclusivity is the problem.
and so
Right.
I think,
If the Oompa band wants to go and play for a half hour.
have their private.
right,
You know.
yeah, not so upset about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that it'd be worth looking at the MOUs as well as having those discussions. It might be that we push that topic until we, because RLBA was yesterday, and so it'd be nice to be able to bring that to them and their attention.
Yeah, I personally would like to have it done before it gets started to be reserved for next year.
That's fair.
So, you know, I mean, the summer's just about.
I totally understand that. Again, end of the day too, is we do need to make sure that we are getting the right voices involved.
Yeah,
And
and
then-
perhaps we, you know, ask for a letter from the Garden Club, have them have their meeting and ask for a letter from Parks Board.
I can tell you that we already have a letter from the Garden Club, and their assertion was, our understanding is this was never gonna be used for these type of things, but when we went back and looked at the MOU and we went back and looked at the documentation, there was nothing that validated that, which was part of the, it's not an unreasonable request, or it's certainly something for council to take up and consider.
Can we at this time have the council just put a moratorium on, giving out any other permits, exclusive permits for that part?
Council is welcome to put forth a resolution of anything they'd like, and we would go ahead and do that.
I don't, personally, I don't
Just
know
a
that we.
moratorium for right now? In other words, so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. You know, everybody hears, oh, you know, we're not gonna be able to use that, so let's get it in right now.
Well, there's a limit on the time frame ahead of time.
Ahead of
Summer's
time.
almost
Yeah,
over.
yeah. What is it? There's a,
Is it 90 days?
I wanna say it's 6 months,
6
but-
months, yeah.
So we
I
have-
think we're good, we're good.
Yeah,
We're good.
yeah, no, I think that,
Yeah, I think if we get it done by the end of the year.
yeah,
I just-
okay. No, again, I'm
Yeah,
not intending,
yeah.
I'm thinking like
Yeah, yeah, I think
September
we'll be okay.
meeting
Yeah.
would be a good time to start that, because we can
You
actually
know,
have a couple weeks
yeah.
to get, again,
Feedback
RLBA,
from the other-
Garden Club, and just whatever other
Right.
input we're hearing throughout the
Right.
community.
And probably have to change the MOU.
Well, they.
No, I don't know
I
that
don't
it
think you would
changes
have
the
to.
MOU.
No.
So there's another right now alternative. They have an MOU that says they inform us when they use it.
Mhm.
They could call up and tell us, we're using it every weekend between now and December for an event.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm, whether there's a short-term moratorium that staff can use to say that they're not doing that, I would say that's council's purview, whether
You'd have to
council
check with-
uses this. I'm not
You'd have to
hearing,
check with
I'm not
Brian to
hearing
make sure it's not
universal.
already reserved for somebody too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we have a calendar, it's easy enough
Yeah,
to validate that, but,
Is the
Okay.
calendar
But-
online?
pardon?
Is the calendar online?
The calendar is not publicly available, we haven't figured out that magic yet.
no, because it's not necessary, some of those small events, you don't necessarily, you know,
Yeah.
they don't need to know who's reserving it. It's
I mean,
just
honestly,
reserved,
just
so.
having a block to show that it's unavailable is really all
Yeah,
that I
that's
think
all
is
we
Yeah,
really
there
need,
you
yeah,
go.
available.
Absolutely. So,
Okay, so that was it for land use and planning. Again, we'll be cranking out some projects. And then Public Works. Gonna move on to that one. Again, we had a pretty light meeting. Mike Maples was not able to attend, but he did send us a bunch of updates, which is fabulous. I'm not gonna read through all of those. We'll just say that he is hard at work and,
Yeah.
lots of good things on the horizon.
I
They
think
will
the
be
big
in the
one that
minutes.
would be of public, I think the big one that would be of public interest, is probably, the pool. So we had a boiler problem with the
Oh, yeah.
pool that I think many people are aware of. We researched lots of options, including how to repair it, would cost about $13,000, and the parts get in a month, so there's a problem there. The pool, the boiler is actually out of warranty, however, given that it died with 4 months of use, and there was some questions about whether it was installed properly or spun up properly, through conversation and negotiations, basically what they're doing is we are replacing the unit with an upgraded unit, that has some features that work better with a large body of cold water, so it kind of does a gradual mix cold and warm to keep the boiler from overworking itself. Things we probably should have had initially, And that's, our cost on that is gonna be $12,000. And that's actually gonna be funded by, some leftover pool money that's in there. So we're gonna have, the goal is to have that in this year so that it can be tested, and proven. And then we'll also have that same company come out and do a spin up next year, and that'll probably be part of our regular operations and maintenance, so that somebody doesn't come in and say, oh, you didn't spin it up right, or you didn't do.
Yeah.
Given the lessons from the warranty and such this time, but the goal is to get it in this year and functioning to prove that it's there, so we don't discover we have problems in spring and not be able to react to it in time.
The other piece that I do think would be of interest is stormwater. Just the stormwater project is obviously moving right along. 95 days into the project, 65 days remain. They are going to be, I just think it's important that people know where they're gonna be working. They'll be working 11th Street from Broadway, western to Word. Once completed to Word, they will move back to Oaks and 11th and proceed south along Oaks to the intersection of 13th. Once completed at 13th, they'll move to Platt and 8th to proceed west to Oaks. And then go south to 9th Street and then proceed west on 9th to Villard. Once completed at Villard Avenue, they'll move back to Oaks and 9th. I know I just wish I had a map. But that being said, just so people kind of know where their directions are gonna be, so plan ahead.
I know, they're gonna be on those side streets right off of Broadway.
Yep.
On like 11th and 9th and 10th for
Yep.
pretty much the rest of the summer.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you may have to find another place to park.
And there are two kind of additions and tweaks that we are working on the stormwater. One is the drains along Broadway, are, currently going into our sewer system, so all that water that's captured so nicely on Broadway then gets pumped into our sewer, which is part of what we're trying to avoid. We went to the state and they said, thank you, no, but we still, so we are hoping that we can address that within the cushion that we built into the loan when we first built it up. The project is going on target and on scale, so we anticipate we'll be able to do that within our current budgets. And then the second one is extending it up to capture the water from the mine issue up on 14th and Grant. And the hope and expectation is we've invested in the engineering side of it, but the expectation is that abandoned mines with DEQ is going to come in and address those costs and possibly even reimburse us for the engineering. But we made the decision to go ahead and move forward with that engineering because we know what winter looks like, and when it shows up here, we remember when there was 4 feet of snow on October 1st. And so, we basically were trying to keep that project moving, not at the speed of government, and so we've taken some preemptive moves and gambles to make sure that that's addressed.
Other thing that we talked about in Public Works is reserved parking spaces, specifically for loading areas, handicap spaces, and public parking areas. So we kind of brought this conversation up because the county needed a parking space. Is this correct? I want to make sure I understand the origin story of this.
Yeah, and it turns out that's addressed within our current code.
Yep, so that is currently addressed in our code, but then there's also the option where people can submit an application to get their own public parking space reserved in front of their businesses.
And who approves that?
So that.
It's gotta pay a fee.
It actually, so it's not a council approval. And you're welcome to go on and look at 614. It's actually in the minutes, so you can go on and look at the code. Number 1 in there basically says that businesses can do it basically for loading and unloading that's tied to their, what's the wordage?
It's unloading or loading
Commodities. But it's like certain hours, so people aren't really using that because you don't know when the truck's gonna show up, so you can't say 10 to 2 on Tuesdays,
Yeah.
sort of a thing. But one of the conversations that came up is there a 4th category that maybe belongs on there, which is, some shortened zones, that's like a 15-minute loading and unloading, spread out through town. So there's pros and cons, right? If you had like one on every block, that was a 15-minute loading and unloading, so somebody could take their packages into Junction 7 or pick up their pizza. But at the same time, as you do those, that's also a parking spot that's not available for 4-hour shoppers.
We already have problems.
And so anyway, it was a fun conversation,
Yeah.
that I'm sure will bring months of entertaining enlightenment and conversation.
Yeah, so essentially it was
Yeah,
like
they're,
the starting point, lots of exploration to go into that,
We
so.
discovered that parking has never been discussed in this town ever before.
Oh, I know.
Never
No.
once.
Nobody complains.
Who
Nobody.
drives even?
There was some interesting conversations, but there's some stakeholders with, the Business Alliance and Chamber and stuff that, I think it's one of those that there was some good ideas that came up. But I think it's one of those that is the whole worksheet workout. What are the unintended consequences? What are the arguments for? What are the arguments against? What problem are you solving? Sort of a,
What problems are you creating?
yeah. And so I think this is gonna be one of those discussions that utilizes the Dave cheat sheet well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that was pretty much the majority, the bulk of our conversation in Public Works.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from Public Works from the rest of council? All right, thank you. Any correspondence that is noteworthy?
Just, Sherry, the Chamber Director, Sherry Weimer, asked me to announce to correspondence that this Thursday, August 15th, from 5:30 to 7, Seymour, and Rocky Fork Juniper are hosting Chamber After Hours at Rocky Fork Juniper, their new location south of town, and everyone is invited.
That's the one with the goat on the roof, right?
Correct.
Yes,
Right next to me. When is
She
it?
said, this Thursday from 5:30 to 7.
Oh, Thursday?
Yeah, 8:15. She just said she hadn't been able to invite council recently, so would like some of us to attend if we are able.
Thank you.
Food and drinks and, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead, I'm
I have
done.
one too, when you're done.
Yes, I'm done.
You're good. I had, some conversations with a person who lives on Adams, that is in my ward, and she's been dealing with some drainage issues from the rainwater, and it's going directly into her property and flooding her basement. And so I referred her to, the Public Works Director, and I got a text say that she hasn't heard anything, so just wondering where to go with that.
If you want to forward that to me, I will follow up there. My guess is it got lost because that's very
I know there's a lot going on.
yeah, but he's also generally really good at responding. So if you want to forward that on to me, I'm happy to follow up with
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other correspondence? All right, what I'd like to do, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. This is anything within the city's purview. You're welcome to address council at this time. And again, if you'd please direct your comments to the chair, we'll open the public comment. We'll first look to the room. Any comments from the room? All right, we'll next go to online. If you'd like to make a comment on anything in the city's purview, please, turn on your camera, come off mute, raise your hand, something that'll indicate that you'd like to comment. Going once? Going twice? Last call for public comments. We'll close that. And I'll take a motion on agenda number 13. Move to adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And thank you to the public for your joining in your